presenting concerts in your local community, creative ideas for making concerts happen anywhere. And here are the goals, kind of our ideas for what we want to talk about. Essentially, we want to use the WCMW, which is the workshop's acronym, as a case study for showing these things. Ideas and strategies for producing musical events in a small community, but beyond small, really any community. Also, how to evaluate assets in your own community that can help make these musical events happen. And finally, ideas on how to plan innovative programs on a tight budget that are relevant to the community. So, starting things that are interesting and that are relevant, but that, when you're starting something, you don't necessarily have the resources, that we wish we did. So, tight budget equals trying to be creative.
So, just to give you a little bit of a background on us and where we come from and how we got where we are today. Steve and I both finished our master's degrees in May of 2010, and from there we started thinking about what we wanted to do work-wise and where we might want to settle. And I found a small part-time church job listed in Westminster, Massachusetts, and for those of you who are not familiar with that, we're going to show you exactly where that is on the map in just a minute. But it's a small town, about 7,000 residents. And we thought it would be a great place to move and start up some musical things. We realized very quickly after moving here that there's not a lot of music that's performed right in town. There are things on either side of Westminster and the neighboring towns. Worcester's about half an hour south of us. Obviously Boston, we're a little over an hour outside of Boston. There's plenty of musical things happening there, but for the immediate community right here in Westminster, we saw this great need for having musical events for the community. So we started asking ourselves, how can we bring music into this town? How would we get that funded? Where would we hold these events? And the biggest question, would people come to anything that we might try to organize?
So you're saying, where is this again? So if you see on the map here, the yellow star, this is Westminster, beautiful little small town in New England. And it's about 50 miles to Boston, which is on the coast over here, and about 210 miles down to New York City. So there are two major cities that are, fairly close. Obviously, Boston is about an hour away. But although those cities are close, it is still a small town. And so kind of what we're talking about is how to make these things happen in a small town. But we hope that these ideas and strategies will be relevant in other small towns, in small cities, bigger cities. But this is where what we're doing is taking place.
So by this point, we had recognized a need in the community for organizing some musical events. So our next step was to go through an evaluation period and just ask ourselves some questions and figure out some logistics for making this happen. So we went through questions similar to this, evaluating what the need would be in this particular community. So you can look at your community and evaluate what's happening, what's not happening. One of the big pieces of this evaluation is making sure that whatever need you're recognizing matches your interest. It's really important that if you're going to invest time and energy into creating something or putting on concerts, that you're interested in doing that. If you're not a musician, if you're interested in setting up an art gallery or something in your community, make sure that it's something that you're passionate about, work that you're going to be excited to get up and do each day. It's important to recognize if someone is already trying to do what you're doing in the same place for the same community. It would be an opportunity to collaborate with them. It's important to outline what you want to achieve, and we do that with setting up our workshop, kind of making goals, which we'll talk about in a minute. And also to research what's going on around you, even outside of your community. We became aware of what was happening in the neighboring towns and what people and organizations were doing there. Start asking people in the community about your ideas and sort of gauge what the reception level might be for that.
So let's say you've come up with an idea that you're really passionate about, and you're trying to figure out how do you make this happen at this point. And so the process that we kind of went through, and that I think is one process you could use, is start by evaluating your assets. What is in your community? What is around you that can help make this happen? So are there organizations or businesses that can help you in some way? Are there people that you already know that you're connected with? Being connected is a huge part of making concerts happen, especially when you do it like we've done this workshop where we started really from nothing, from the ground up. So we used our friends, we used people we knew in the area. We, talked to people that we just met a few months earlier and tried to involve them. And we talked to businesses we had just met and tried to involve them. So think about the people that you know or may not know and try to get to know them and get to know what's in your area that might be relevant in some way and be able to help you. And then in terms of funding, also getting things off the ground, are there local or state grants available to you? Typically, each state, each county might have some sort of cultural grant programs. There's also foundations that have, grants available to cultural programs. So there's some research to be done there that takes some time, obviously. But again, if you just sort of pay attention to what's going on in your area, there's undoubtedly opportunities there.
So two of the main things that we saw as needs in our community were the access to musical events right here in town, having things that were based in Westminster for Westminster. And obviously these matched our interests. We're both musicians. We both view ourselves as leaders and, don't mind facilitating concerts that other people perform. We don't have to be the ones performing them all the time. The second piece of that was also a need for participatory opportunities for people in the community that sing or that play musical instruments that, would like the opportunity to collaborate with other people like themselves. During the year in our town, people are very committed and they're involved with school and with work and with, there are a couple community choirs in the area that people participate in. And so we thought for our workshop, we try to target this for a more downtime of the year, which in our case is the summer months, when people have fewer commitments and fewer places to plug into those musical events that they have going on during the year. So like Steve said, we identified our assets, the things that can help us make this happen. We started looking into venue funding and ways to build up an audience for our first year. So I talked about this a little while ago, but our goals for the first year, we outlined this in the early stage of our planning. So we wanted to create an organization, a series of events that were free and that were open to everyone, community members of all ages. We wanted this very much to be intergenerational. We wanted there to be a performance component and an education component. Both of those things are very important to us as artists and as creative musicians. We wanted to do things in a sort of innovative way, not just a cookie-cutter model for music festivals that we've seen done elsewhere. We really wanted to tailor this to the people that we've gotten to know in Westminster and the kind of businesses that are here, and just have it be very community-centered and community-oriented.
So again, we evaluated the assets, excuse me, that we could think about both in terms of connections we already had and connections that we could make locally, regionally. So these are some examples. In terms of the venues that we were looking into hosting events at, we came up with 3 venues, and they're listed here. And you're going to notice, the sort of connection between all of them is that they're likely a no-cost venue, which is the last thing it says there. So a theme that you're going to hear us talk about is trying to start up things that you can, get in-kind donations for or sponsored, so that it's not costing you money, and it's helping support what you're doing in some way. So The First Congregational Church of Westminster, Ashley is the director of music. So, she was connected there. It's a beautiful space, a great acoustic, and again, likely a no-cost venue. The town library, which is just down the street from the church, has a beautiful room that we were able to use. We thought a potentially different audience because, we could tap into, other things happening at the library, other events they do, people that might be more likely to go there to that venue, and again, likely no-cost venue. We were able to get, that for free. And finally, a local university, Fitchburg State University Recital Hall. Ashley teaches at the university, a beautiful space, beautiful Steinway piano. Again, a potentially different audience. We could have some of the students there, professors. This is in a neighboring town, so it's a few miles away. Again, it could be a different audience for us, more audience, which is all things that we want to incorporate, and hopefully a no-cost venue, which it turned out to be. Some other artist assets that we're evaluating. Artists. We thought about, okay, who's going to come in to present these events? So first we thought of our friends and who we might know in this area that could present an event. So we tapped our friends, and it worked out fantastic. We looked at local business involvement. How can we involve local businesses in a synergistic way? And one example here is a local hotel donated some rooms for our artists to stay. And in exchange for that, we gave them a full-page ad and really, tried to do as much as we could for them in terms of sponsorship and getting them exposure through our email marketing and our website. So it was a great synergistic relationship we developed with them. In terms of marketing, we evaluated, okay, we can use word of mouth through the church. That was going to be sort of our primary venue, so we had a congregation of people that could help us get the word out and tell their friends, and we could sort of count on a lot of them coming and being our foundational audience group. We also have a email newsletter in the town called the Westminster Vine. It went out to 3,000 residents each week, so that was a great marketing tool that we evaluated and were able to use. We also put out flyers, and we developed an email list that we would send out messages to regularly. So those are some of the marketing assets that we evaluated. And finally, funding. Like I said earlier, we were able to find cultural council grants through our state that are applicable for local programs. Actually, in Massachusetts, each town has their own small budget for town cultural programs. So we could apply to as many towns as we wanted to. We applied to several, saying that our programs were going to be beneficial for residents of their town. And we got some grant money through there, and also through a program at Fitchburg State University that, again, we sort of just found out about and thought, this might work, so we'll give it a shot. And finally, we identified, possible business sponsors, again, thinking synergistically about how we could help those businesses and how they could help us. So in terms of evaluating these assets, it's really about synergies. Think about how what you're doing can benefit others and how they can help you.
So here's a glimpse at our timeline. Like I said at the beginning, we moved to Westminster in July of 2010, and by August we were brainstorming ideas, identifying our assets, planning for summer 2011, and creating our first week of workshop series. By September, October, we applied for a DBA, which if you're not familiar with that just means doing business as, so we could officially operate under our organization's name. We could get business cards, we could have mail and checks made out to the organization instead of made out directly to us. It costs $20. We did it right at Town Hall. So it's really beneficial if you're just starting out so that you can appear a little bit more professional than just operating under your own name. We started finalizing our ideas, writing grants. The grant deadline for the Cultural Council was October 15th, so we had to make sure that we had a budget sort of drafted and that we had an idea of what the week was going to look like by then. By December, we were planning the musical events, more specifics of who we wanted to invite to come and what they were going to do. We put together a simple website and got that up so we could start promoting that and using that for marketing purposes. By January, we found out that we had received some grant money, so we knew we had some funding behind us. February 2011, we again were finalizing our musical events. We started sending out contracts to the guest artists that we were inviting to come, and we started our marketing process. By April, we were in full marketing swing, handling last-minute details, and before we knew it, we were at June 20th, 2011, our first Westminster Chamber Music Workshop.
So I'm going to go through the events that we had last year, and we had 6, so this is the first 3. So the format of the workshop, there was a couple components, but essentially it was 1 week of musical events and music making in Westminster. And so this was June 20th was our first one. And this was a trombone duo, 2 friends of ours from Boston. So again, they were nearby. They come down for the night and present this workshop. They played some duets and talked about playing chamber music and playing duets and what that was like. And people loved it. Our second event was a local singer and pianist who came out and did a variety of songs, really interesting combination of jazz, classical, and Broadway songs, which again, appealed to the diversity that we were looking to have in our workshop. And it was a great event. And again, they talked about the music, and people really enjoyed the educational side of that as well. Our third event, which was on Wednesday, was Dr. Gregory Brown, the choral conductor from Smith College out in the western part of the state, who Ashley knew from college, so again, another friend that we could bring in, gave a lecture on folk song arrangements in 20th century Portugal. And, you can see this is our crowd down here, and there was even more people. We had probably, 30 people there, and they loved it. He was a very engaging speaker, and it was, again, different than our other events, and it was very interesting, and people really, had some great questions, and it was a very successful event. Thursday, we did something pretty fun and a little different. Ashley and I came up with this sort of game that we called a game of musical memory. You can't see the screen up here behind us from the room, but we had a PowerPoint presentation where we had a bunch of numbers, like the game memory, where you'd have cards. You flip over and match them. We had them up on the screen, and we'd play these cards, and essentially they were a bunch of musical examples from all different periods of music. So something all the way from a Renaissance motet all the way up to a rock song or a disco piece from the 70s. And the trick was that people in the audience had to identify common themes between them. So they were forced to listen to, the theme from Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, maybe the original version, and then, where else did they hear it? And inevitably, it would be a very different musical setting, like something, like I said, a disco piece or something. So it got them listening, and it was a lot of fun, and people had a great time. And then our Friday night event was, again, another lecture, and this was Liz Hebbard, another friend that we were able to bring in, and she gave a really interesting talk on Offenbach's music. And again, it was different and really engaging, and people had a great time. And finally, Saturday in the afternoon, we had sort of a final culminating concert where we brought together a lot of the people that had given events during the week, sort of brought them all together for one last hurrah. And we also had, what you'll see here, the chamber choir perform. And that was the participatory element of our workshop. And Ashley's going to talk about that now.
So in addition to having a very different musical event every night for the community and for the participants, we put together a chamber choir for amateur singers, amateur adults. And we have a few college students that participated. Actually, they were able to come on scholarship because of the grant that we received from the university, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So the chamber choir, they each paid $150 for the week, and we had 2 hours of coaching and rehearsals with a friend of mine from college, as Steve said, Greg Brown, who teaches out at Smith College and is a composer. And he lives about 45 minutes west of here. And we happened to just reconnect when we moved to town. I had lost touch with him and wasn't even aware that he was living in Massachusetts. And then we were able to make this great connection and have him come out and be the choir director for a week. So it just goes to show you how powerful your network can be. So we had 2 hours of choir rehearsals every night, and then the final performance, as Steve just said, on the Saturday at the end of our week. We encouraged the people that we knew in town that sang in either our church choir or in the local community choirs, people that we knew at the college that sang in the choirs there, other church choir directors or community choir directors in the area. We just tried to get the word out to as many people as we could to encourage them to participate.
So I mentioned a little bit earlier the sources of funding that we had, and this kind of lays out, just so that we could tell you, what our funding was. Between those couple of coastal council, town grants, we were able to get $950. This Fitchburg State University grant, this was sort of a one-time, one-year grant program that they had put together, sort of a special opportunity that we applied for, and we're really fortunate to get this $1,500 grant. And what that did was, part of it was stipulated for scholarships for Fitchburg State students to attend the workshop. So they were sort of subsidizing scholarships for the students, which was a really great opportunity. Other funding that we were able to solicit were sponsorships from local businesses and private donors. So again, we talked about finding the synergies of local businesses. Some of these were in-kind sponsorships that we were able to get, and others were, businesses actually paying us. We set up some fees for program book ads, and them actually paying, $30, $50, $100 for a advertisement in our program book. And the theory behind that was, our program book is going to be distributed to everyone every night at these events, so hopefully it reaches several hundred people, which it did, and get some good exposure for that business. And again, private donors, people just, wanted to contribute some money, and we recognized them in all of our materials as well. And so I've mentioned in-kind donations and how important they are and can be. And again, we were really fortunate to, approach some businesses and ask for their help, and they were very gracious. Like I mentioned, the hotel room, the Wachusett Village Inn, they donated some rooms for us, and we also set up a block with them so that if people did want to come in from out of town, to see the events and stay over, we advertised on our website that they could, get a special rate with the hotel. So again, we tried to do things for them that would, send some business their way for, really helping us out. And also the venues, all our venues were free, and so they were in-kind donations that the venues, they liked what we were planning to do, completely free concerts, open to everyone. They really liked that initiative, and so they said, we'll let you hold the event here for free. They wanted to be a part of that. And finally, the last piece of our funding was that $150 choir participant fee. Again, that helps offset the costs associated with putting these events on.
So we wanted to talk a little bit about marketing and how we went about that for our first year. When you're marketing a series of events or even just a one-time concert, you want to think about who your audience is and how you can best reach them. So for us, living in a small town where everyone knows each other, word of mouth is a big thing. Getting the word out and getting information in people's hands so that they could bring it back to their places of business and bring it to their dinners with friends and bring it to, the different social events that they were going to in town and help spread the word. Like Steve mentioned before, we had the Westminster Vine last year, which was an email newsletter that had been started a few years before we moved here. And it was sent out every other week, I think. And they had an email list of, 3,000 town residents. So it went directly to the people that we were trying to reach. And one of the great things about this newsletter was that they were often looking for content and stories, and so they wanted submissions. You could just write your own story. So we wrote a series of sort of short articles that highlighted different aspects of the workshop leading up to June of 2011. So every month, we'd have something new in there that would get sent out every week when their email blast went out. So just kind of kept our name fresh in people's minds. And as it got closer, some newspapers from the area started contacting us and asking for more information, wanted to get the dates of the events and a little bit more of the specifics. So we had a few newspaper stories that showed up the weeks before the workshop, which is great. We also wanted to think about places in town where people would see flyers that we might post or information that we might have available. The post office in Westminster is a big gathering spot, I guess. Some people stopping by on their lunch breaks and on the weekends, and just there's a lot of traffic in and out of there. And it's centralized in downtown Westminster. And so we put up a couple flyers there. They had a nice bulletin board for community events. The library, especially since we were holding two of our events there, we were able to put up a poster there advertising all the events, and we made up some postcards that had the dates and a little bit of information, and then on the flip side it had more specifics about each event that we were doing. So we were able to leave a stack of postcards there. Obviously we had the church and then the university in Pittsburgh, where we could also post information and reach those potential audience members. And email marketing was a big thing for us. We discovered MailChimp, which, if you haven't heard of it, it's a free email marketing tool, which was great for us because, again, no cost, and it let us put together our own email list and design our own emails, which is great because we can include our logo and we can customize every email that we send out with our colors and our fonts and make it look like our website, make it look like all of our print materials. So it makes it very professional, and you can create different email campaigns within it so that you can schedule emails to go out at certain intervals. So we use this tool leading up to the workshop, again, to kind of keep our name present in people's minds and to share information with beyond the people that we knew and more with the greater community, people that are involved with community choirs and other music organizations that might be interested. Facebook was another piece of our marketing. We created a Facebook page for the workshop, and we use this as a good tool to connect with other Facebook groups and pages that we knew of. So there are organizations and businesses in town that we were able to connect with via Facebook and share information that way and connect with their readers and fans as well. That was really valuable for us.
So another important piece of doing something like this is documenting, because especially the first year, you're going to people and you're saying, I want to, try this, can you help me? Can we apply for these grants and everything? And, oftentimes you don't have much to show for it besides, here's my idea. But the second time around, if you document properly the first time, you're going to have a lot of great stuff to show. And of course, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, it's only going to get better. But the first time, obviously, it's really going to help you for approaching people the second time around. So keep great records of everything. Financially, keep everything very organized. We use spreadsheets galore to keep things tracked. And, in terms of keeping your costs and your income and just keeping it organized, keeping your receipts. And then capturing as much as you can, because, again, for grants and for promotion. You're going to want, pictures of everything. You're going to want to save as many materials as you can, flyers, program books, and everything. You may think, oh, we're not going to need these, but you will, so just hold on to them. And then if you can, video is a fantastic resource today. We bought a flip camera, which is a HD quality camera that'll last up to 2 hours at a time for $125. And our intention was to video all the events, which we did. And then what we would do is each day of the workshop, we would sort of like take a 3-minute clip and then put a little intro. Ashley and I would sit down and do a little introductory video and say, here's what happened today. And we put up on our website, and let people know that it was there so that we could just kind of keep, for people that didn't come, they could get a little taste of it and then think, oh, we should really go to this next one. This looks really interesting. So just providing a way to just keep connecting with these people, and especially visually. Video is so powerful today that if you can, video is definitely a great resource and a great way of documenting what you're doing. And finally, we circulated surveys at each event to get feedback from audience members and the participants, the choir members. And this was crucial because it allowed us to really get to know what people's reactions were to our ideas. This was the first time we were doing this, and we thought, okay, we have some interesting, some fun, some cool ideas, but we're just trying this out. How do people feel about it? What's their reaction? And we got some great feedback, and it allowed us to really start to hone in how we can make this better, because that's ultimately the goal, is we want to make these events the best we possibly can for this community. And that was at the outset what we wanted to do, make it free and make it great. And so getting feedback from everyone that was there is going to help us do that.
So we started this whole process as an evaluation period, and right after the first workshop ended, we went into another evaluation period, and that's what can we learn from this experience, and how can we do things differently next year. So one important thing when you're just starting out and you try something new that you haven't done before in a new place, in a new community, be open to changing your ideas, listening to that feedback. It was really important to us to know how the community was responding to each of our events. Which events did they really like? What suggestions did they have for improving on it in the future? What kind of things would they like to see? So a couple things that we took away from our first year. We realized that our events might be too late in the evening for some of our potential audience members. We had everything scheduled at 8 because we had a choir rehearsing before that, and we didn't want to back that up too early because of people getting out of work and needing to eat dinner and things like that. But we realized that 8 o'clock might be a little late for having an event every night. We also thought that maybe it might be helpful in this next year to spread out our events. Instead of grouping everything into 1 week and go, there's something every night, what if we spread them out over a longer period of time and maybe drew in more audience members. If someone was out of town, say, for that given week, they would have missed the whole thing. Whereas if we spread it out over 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, we'd have a better chance of including more people. We realized that the choir component was tricky to plan and tough to organize at times, and maybe there was an alternative to how we could incorporate that participatory element into what we wanted to do this year. We realized that summer is a great time to catch people because they have fewer commitments, but also they have fewer commitments, which means they're not as willing to commit to be a part of something. They wanted to take a break. A lot of people leave town for the summer in our community, take extended vacations, especially when school is out. It's really hard to incorporate people into, include them in coming to something, I guess. It's hard to hold a concert and have people come out for that. So maybe June is a little too late in the year to catch people in our community because of the schedules that they keep. We also thought that maybe the venues were too spread out, even though 2 of our venues were just right down the street from each other. The third venue being in a different town, even though it's just 15 minutes down the road. Perhaps it was confusing to have our events bouncing back and forth between venues every night. So perhaps it would be better in this coming year to centralize everything into one location. So in planning for our second year, we are planning 4 larger events, 4 bigger concerts, and we're spreading them out over the entire month of May. So there will be an evening event every weekend, Saturday night at 7 instead of at 8. And everything will be in one venue. And we're using the church as our venue because of the space and the acoustics and having the piano there. And again, it's a no-cost venue for us. So it's local and we have good connections there. And that's a strong part of our audience base. We wanted to try for more diversity in our musical events this year. So we're bringing in a jazz trio, which is very different from what we had last year, and we have a saxophone quartet coming in, a string duo. So we wanted just to try all new things and not repeat anything that we did last year. We also wanted to work this year to create more partnerships with the local businesses and organizations that are here in town. So our first event, we're actually going to be co-presenting with a concert presenter in Pittsburgh, which is the next town over. Center Stage presents concerts there throughout the year, and they've agreed to partner with us in presenting our first event, which will be the Jazz Trio. We're also going to pair this event with a wine tasting, which will be held just down the street from the church, just 2 doors down. So we'll encourage people to park and join us at the wine tasting before the concert, and then walk down to the concert at 7. Partnerships are really great for small businesses, local businesses, and for your organization, whatever you might be trying to build in your community. It's just a great way to include the companies and the businesses that are in the community and to incorporate them into what you're doing. And it's beneficial to you because they have a following already. They're established in the town. They know people. Maybe there's a monetary attachment to that as well, where they can help sponsor one of your events or something that you're trying to do. So if you are in a place where you can explore that, partnerships are really great for both parties involved.
So I'm going to take you through our second season here quickly. So earlier I showed you our 6 events from year 1, and here are 4 events for year 2, which we're very excited about. So May 5th, our first event, and again, these are all Saturdays in May. They're all sort of Saturday prime time events. So the Samira Evans Jazz Trio. Samira Evans is a fantastic jazz singer originally from New Orleans, who's going to be bringing a jazz trio to Westminster, which is going to be a lot of fun. And again, she's going to perform and she's going to talk about jazz and what she does, and it should be just outstanding. Our second event, a week later, Saturday, May 12th, is going to be a community sing led by Dr. Susan Conklin, who is the chair of music education at Boston University. And again, here's another connection. You know, Dr. Conklin was someone who Ashley and I both had a class with when we did our master's. So, you know, again, connecting with the people you already know is just great. And this is going to be, like we said, the sort of participatory element this year that we're very excited about, you know, to bring anyone into this event. Whether you sing or not, you are welcome to come. And, you know, everyone can sing, and that's not a question, but whether or not you regularly do or, you know, anything, it's going to be a great opportunity for everyone in the community to come and, you know, have some fun. And then our second 2 events, so again, 1 week later, Saturday, May 19th, we're bringing in a saxophone quartet directed by Lynn Klock, who is the saxophone professor at University of Massachusetts Amherst and widely regarded as one of the finest saxophonists and teachers in the country. So it's going to be great. Again, they're going to play some very interesting, diverse music, and they're going to talk about it. And it should be very interesting and very different, again, from the kind of things we've done so far. And our final event, Saturday, May 26th, is going to be the Copernicus Duo, which is a husband and wife team, cellist and violinist, who are both outstanding musicians, and who, again, will play a variety of duo music, and they'll talk about how they put this together and how much they love it, and it should be a great way to wrap up our second season.
So in conclusion for tonight's webinar, we wanted to give you a couple final points for those of you who are looking to create events, make concerts happen in your community. Big number one on the list is get connected. Get to know people, get to know the businesses, get to know what makes your community unique. Everyone has something to offer, and there are tons of ways that people can help you build up something new, create something new. Identify your local assets, what's available to you in terms of funding and donations and venues and people that can get involved and can help you out. Think about ways that you can get in-kind funding. Last year, for example, we wanted the piano tuned at the church before our first concert. And we approached, I made a connection with a piano tutor in the area, and I approached him and asked if he would consider donating a piano tuning in kind in exchange for an ad in our program book, which would give him some publicity for his business and for his teaching that he does. And so he agreed to do that, which was an even exchange, really, in the cost of the program book ad. And it got us a free piano tuning in kind. And we gave him a program book ad, and that's a great example of kind of thinking outside the box for that in-kind funding. And lastly, involve your friends, people that you know, the networks that you've built up. Those are likely people that you trust, and you have similar interests with them, and it's always more fun to work with people that you know and that you're comfortable with and that have similar ideas as you do.
So that is our prepared presentation for the evening. We thank you for listening and hope that you might have some questions for us. We're happy to try to answer them. And here we've listed our website where you can go see more information about the people performing this year in May and more information about the workshop in general. You can connect with our Facebook page there. And here's our email address if you want to email us. We're happy to, answer any questions you have through email as well. So I'm going to turn to my moderator hat just for a second to remind you, if you do have questions, feel free to write them into the question box on the control panel. There, you can just type them in, and we'll read them for you and answer them. If you'd like to actually be unmuted and talk with us, which we would love, you can just hit the yellow hand button on your control panel, and that will let us know that you want to be unmuted, and we can do that. So let's see what has come in so far. Okay, so we have a couple questions here. The first one is, how did you handle printing costs for the workshop with program books and flyers? It says, how did you handle that? You want to take that?
Sure, I'll answer that. That was actually a really great thing for us last year. We had this grant from Pittsburgh State that, again, like Steve mentioned, was sort of a one-time opportunity for us that came up at the last minute at the end of the fall semester last year. And I was able to apply for it, co-writing it with a full-time faculty member since I'm only part-time. And part of that money was allocated for student scholarships, as we mentioned before, the Chamber Park participants. But we also were able to use the university's printing services, which was really great because we got all of our materials printed there as part of that scholarship money, and everything was really low cost but really high quality. We got our program books printed there. We had color flyers printed up that we could post around town and around the school and the church. We got those postcards that were back there on one of those slides that were two-sided and in color, so we could have those to hand out and leave stacked up places. And then any handouts that our guest artists wanted to give to the audience on the nights of their events. We were able to have those printed up. We had surveys printed, so we were able to print up anything that we wanted, which is probably more than I anticipate we'll print this year. But it was really great to have access to that. And again, that was part of that grant from the university. Well, I'll read the next one, okay. And then you can answer. The next question that came in is, how did you get people to come back every night? Having an event every night during the course of the week, how did you get people to come back?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mentioned, the video blog post that we did, and how we sort of spliced together a little bit of us talking, a little commentary about the events, along with an actual clip of that day's event. So that was one way that we sort of reached out to people each day and reminded them, hey, we did this cool thing today, and don't forget, tomorrow we have this other interesting event. So that was one way we were able to remind people about what was going on. We also sent out daily emails. So this year, obviously, because the events are spread out, we won't necessarily do it that way, but we'll probably send out an email, the day before each of those events. Again, and it may be a personal email that we write to people, or in addition to the blast email that goes out to our email list, which again just reminds people, hey, don't forget, we have this event, at 7 p.m. and this is what it is and this is where it is. So I think there's a balance. You don't want to spam people, you don't want to overdo it, but just doing it in a way that's helpful and honest, and just we're not trying to get anything from them. These are free events. We're just, we want to make sure people remember that they're going on and that they can come. So we did emails often, we did the video blogs, and then we did Facebook. So we had, the events listed there, and we had reminders, and, we would post stuff, again, every day, reminding people via Facebook. So I think those were our three ways of really, reaching people. Okay, looks like our next question that's come in is, what about event and liability insurance? And the person is just asking if we cover that, and we haven't. So, and how much do the fees for concert licensing cost? So those are great questions. Let me take the first part here. It really depends on the venue in terms of liability insurance. We were fortunate with our venues that they had insurance policies that were sort of umbrella policies and would cover, anything that was done in that venue. Sometimes when you have an event at a particular venue, you have to sign a contract with them, and there's an insurance clause in there, and you might have to pay some kind of fee for it. But in our case, it was provided, and our event was covered underneath that. So that was really a nice benefit.
If I can just add on to that too, a lot of these venues, in order to kind of make up for that umbrella policy that they have for insurance, they might charge you a small fee to have an event there. And so technically you're covered, but you paid this small fee to sort of offset that, what's being provided to you. In our cases, the church's umbrella policy and the library and then the university, they waived those fees for us. The fee actually for the university was built into the grant that we received, because we had to pay custodians to come in and move the piano out and tune the piano, and all that was built into the grant that we had from them.
Great. And another question that's come in here says, how did you build your website? Good question.
Well, Steve and I are both sort of relatively new within the last couple of years of learning the ins and outs of building websites, but we've gotten pretty good at WordPress. I would say. And we figured it would be probably the easiest way to just put information up there and keep it clean. So we just got a free WordPress template, and we bought a domain name so that it matched our organization name. And then we paid for the hosting through WordPress. And so that totaled, what, $17, I think, for the year, for the domain and the hosting through WordPress. And so from there, you can add pages, and you can add a blog page so that you can add posts to that. We wanted a sort of a landing page for ours so that it didn't go straight to the blog. So we created a home page that was separate. You can input contact forms. There's lots of different stuff you can do with the templates that are available and the themes that are available. And it all looks very professional, and you don't have to know a lot about coding and HTML and all that fun stuff. So we were able to customize it to match our organization's look and feel by using our colors and using our fonts and using our logo and things like that. We can connect it with our Facebook page so that you can click from there to our Facebook page. We created a separate page where you could sign up for our email list and where you could get information on sponsorships and partnering with us. So we have a separate page for that. And then it's just a great way to, it's a great place to have all your information available for what's coming up. So actually, we didn't even talk about this at some point. Between last year's workshop and when we started advertising for this year's workshop, we actually put together blog posts that featured concerts that were happening in the area to kind of keep people connected to the concert scene. So that way we had a blog post going out on the first of every month that listed all the concerts that were going to happen in the area that month. And it kept our name sort of in the forefront of people's minds, but it also connected people with musical events that were happening in the area, which we thought was valuable. That's kind of what we wanted to be known for, was being a facilitator for that. It's not just about us and come to our events, but just go out there and take part in the events that are happening all throughout the year.
Looks like we have probably time for one more question, and so we have a question here from one of the choir members from our first year, and so here goes. It says the community sing plan for one of the sessions in May seems like it may be geared for all ages, but I bet we will get mostly adult turnout. Since I know Ashley's choir director for the children's choir in our church, as well as having done a sing-along recently with small children in our community, with her sidekick Saxophone Steve, which is my superhero name. My question is whether you might find a program for one of the workshops in the future for the younger audience to help excite and interest in music in the children and younger members of our community.
Absolutely. That's one of the great things about, for those of you who don't know, Steve and I did a program for young children, young meaning 2- and 3-year-olds, like 56 of them last month, and it was a grant-funded program actually through the elementary school in town, and we were approached last fall about doing a program for them, and we were told to expect like 8 children, and then we got 56 that showed up. And we thought this would be great to have a component like this, to have a children's concert, as part of the workshop. And the way that it works with their schedules, and they operate on the school schedule and everything, it got scheduled for February, which is fine. So it's separate from our May event, but we still publicized it through our website like it was a workshop event. But it would definitely be something that I could see plugging into the workshop in the future, because we had such a great response from the community members and from our little musicians in the community that are so eager to take part and to hear new music and to sing and dance and be silly with us. And I could definitely see that as being an important component.
Yeah, and that was another instance where, again, it was a partnership. They approached us saying, we'd love to have you do a children's music event. And we said, sure. And then months later, we thought, maybe they'd be willing to sort of between, them and the Westminster Chamber Music Workshop. So the event was actually technically sort of like co-presented with one of the organizations being the workshop. So that was a workshop event. It was months in advance of our, other events. But that's another instance where, again, we just asked them, hey, can we say that this is, co-presented, and they agreed to it. So, don't be afraid to ask and approach those ideas. But yeah, I mean, we absolutely would like to, do something like that within the context of our, typical time frame as well. So, great question. And I guess with that, our hour is up, and the clock is striking.